Let's take a look at modeling a simple piece of wood and getting some texture on it with an unwrap. So in Max here, I'm going to start with a box and we're just going to make a plank of wood at this point. So I'm going to drag something out that's probably the size of an old piece of wood we're going to look at. Okay, so that's about the height and about the length and width that I'm looking for, let's say. You'll notice that I don't have any major segments in it. I'm just going to leave it as is, and I'm going to add them as necessary as I go. So I'm going to collapse this right away in this case. There's not going to be any major procedural modeling going on here. I'm going to drop this down to an editable poly and make sure that we have our poly tools open now. Again, mostly these are docked at the top for users. But they often come in closed up like this, so you can't see them. Make sure that you open them up and show them directly. So that show is up in this right in this button here, and we can show that and make sure that they stay open and we can use them. Now we want the modeling ribbon here, and we're going to immediately go into vertex mode. Of course, that is 1 on the keyboard, and again, it shows here and here. And even if you open up the editable poly, whenever you see this drop down right here, okay, this little triangle, this means that you can open it up into sub-object levels. And of course, all sub-object levels are hotkeyed the same: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are sub-object levels, and that goes for any modifier, anything that's got sub-object levels to it. Those hotkeys will work. And again, if there's only 2 sub-object levels, it's 1 and 2. 3, 4, and 5 won't do anything, of course. So to be able to proceed with this, we're going to use the Swift Loop, which is up at the top here. We're going to be using the Cut tool. Okay, we may even end up using the Connect tool. And so make sure that you can identify those and know where those all are. So the Swift loop is Alt 1 on the keyboard, and I want to put some, cuts in the end here. So I want to basically put some, cuts going in here, so it's all cracked on the end. Maybe even add some, sort of cracks on the side, pieces missing. And then eventually we'll even talk about adding some, knot holes into it. So if we want to put in a hole or whatever else, knock a corner off, that sort of thing. Now, something that you always hear is everything has to remain quads all the time. That's simply not true. It's true if you're going to be using subdivision surfaces like Turbo Smooth, OpenSubDiv, or in other pieces of software. Maya, it's the smooth node. They also have OpenSubDiv, whatever it is in Blender, C4D, or any other piece of software. It's not true because everything's always triangles anyways. It's just that it's neater and cleaner if things stay as quads as much as possible. But we're going to pretty much ignore it for the most part to make this lower res kind of, a piece of wood. So I'm going to do, a Swift loop right around the board here. And I'm going to start one about here somewhere across that way so that I have an area right here where I'm going to build that piece that's going to be missing in here. So it's going to be added in this section here. So I'm then going to use the cut tool, okay, which is Alt C, and I'm going to just go in and drag and cut. You can cut across multiple edges. You don't have to click on each one. And then, simple as it is, I'm going to grab these vertices here, drag them in, and then I'm just going to use my scale tool and scale them just in so it looks a bit more of a crack. So you're getting this crack in the piece of wood. Yeah, something else to note, I like changing my selection methods. I find when I'm working and orbiting around, the rectangle isn't always the best for getting exactly what I want. If you take a look right here is Q, of course. So this is Q on the keyboard for select. But right here are selection types, so how you end up selecting. And if you continually press Q on the keyboard, it will cycle it through to different ones, or you can click and hold and choose out of it. So I tend to prefer the lasso methodology so that I can just sort of lasso an area. I can grab an area really fast. I find it just somehow more, tactile somehow, but I also work with a Wacom pen and Intuos Pro on my desk, not the monitor style one because it drains the blood out of your arm, but one on my desk, and I tend to use it, and so I find it's very easy to be able to marquee around things this way. So there you go. So I can then consider knocking a corner off, making it look a little bit less organized kind of thing, you know, and do that again. So that's Alt 1. I'll drop in another one. And then I'm going to go in and grab the Alt C for the cut tool. Grab the center ones again, pull them back, maybe scale them down a little bit, and do whatever else I need to. If I want to do it, cross, here I want to knock a corner out. So I might want to add just a swift loop all the way around. So again, swift loop tool up the top. And I'm just going to add one maybe across here at some point. So now I'm going to add one in here, exactly the same thing, Alt C. Let's do the same kind of thing, except what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here to here and back up. And we can just knock in a corner. We can just kind of push that corner in and get it to look like a little notch out of the piece of wood. Maybe grab one of these and stretch it out long ways or something so that we've got these chunks and pieces missing out of the wood. Very quickly, you can see it allows for us to, sort of dress up the piece of wood and make it look a little more kind of natural as a scrapped up pieces of wood. So how much you want to do this is entirely up to whatever you're working on and what you need. Now you could also do both ends slightly different. So as you turn them and flip them over, you'll get different looks to it. So you might want to have certain details on one side and not the other. Now we also might want to take a look at having like a crevice cut down into it, let's say, and we can again do that pretty easily by I'm just going to go swift loop and add a couple of rows of edge loops along there, and we're just going to have a crack in here. So same thing, I'm just going to go to my cut tool, which was Alt C, and pull that. You'll see it snap when you may have to zoom in closer so that you can snap things closer together if you want to, or just move them later. And there's a crack at it. It's that easy to be able to sort of start building up these things and then define them more and more as you go. Start simple, get your major key things built into it, and go from there. Now, if you notice that it looks very smooth down into that crack, we can make it harder by using our properties and smooth or smooth 30, and it'll show you those cracks better because of smoothing groups. That'll be a discussion for another time. So we'll just go ahead and we'll model this up, and then we'll do an unwrap on it to be able to apply wood to it. So as I'm modeling here, I decided I wanted to define an edge loop right through here, okay, so that maybe I can get my cracks on a bit sort of more interesting angles and whatnot. So if we try and do that with Swift Loop in this case, you'll notice that it doesn't loop around. It only goes so far and it stops. I'll even make this piece of wood blue for now so you can see it a bit better. You can see it stops, and that's because we're stopping on triangles. We have to pass through quads for it to continue all the way around. Well, we can still do it because if we enter sub-object edge mode, which is 2 on the keyboard, and we select across and select all the edges that we want to cut across and make sure those are all selected, and it looks like they are. We can then simply use the connect hotkey and connect for that, and it'll connect all the way around. So if we wanted to be able to add it right across, it certainly will still work. So now we have just some more vertices to be able to work with, and we can kind of break up the shape and form a little more, to make it just a little bit more interesting on in the model. Careful getting sort of, some things, you'll see the weird shading start happening. Just sort of careful what you're doing, how far you're kind of pushing things. I'm just going to straighten those up a little bit, but at least then I can have these cracks just a little bit more interesting, as it would be. Another one we can use is to chamfer off some vertices. In other words, like put a little triangular flat spot in places. So up here, there's going to be chamfer. And if you click and drag, you'll find you get this default that is working here. And sometimes a little uncontrollable. So we have the chamfer settings, which opens up the caddy that we can work with. Now, you can also hold down Shift and click on any one that has this drop-down menu. And if it has something to open up, it'll open it up for you. So that then gives us all the settings. We can take the setting that gives us how many there are. We're going to say take it down to 0. We're going to flatten that, and then we're going to also take the amount and be able to play with that and get it to knock a corner off. Now the neat part is that you can just select another vertex now, and it's going to do the same there. I haven't committed to anything, so I can go around the model and just pick areas, and it'll apply these settings to it. So if I hit the OK or the check mark, it'll close it, and we can start again on this. So let's open it again. If you notice what it just did is we had those vertices selected, so it went to chamfer those again. You're not committed to them. If I deselect those vertices, you'll notice it's going to give me that setting wherever I want it now. So I might want slightly different settings, maybe a smaller, sort of knocked off on the corner of things. I can go around now and I can just pick some vertices and get it to add some areas that will allow me to sort of just dress it up a little bit more. So I'm just going to go around and just find a few of these, see what I can get. That's looking kind of cool. It's going to knock off some little corners in there. So let's just knock some off on this end as well. So it's nice because you can just adjust them at will and then simply say OK. Now what's also neat is you've got this plus sign ability. So I'm going to hit the plus sign, not the check mark, which basically says accept it and then close the dialog. I'm going to say plus, and plus you'll notice it looks like it's doing something crazy. Well, it hasn't, because it accepted the previous one. You can see it's now been accepted, and it's using any given selection for the next one now. So we can continue working and adding, deviations to our surface like this, and coming up with some interesting shapes and forms wherever we want them. And it is we don't have to open and close it all the time. So there you go. It's just going to be really easy for us to go around now and add some things in some places, and then eventually hit the check mark to close it and accept what we've got. So that's knocked off a bunch of corners. I could probably use some more detail in places. But let's stick a knot hole in here and play around with actually having a hole. So I'm going to go into Alt-1 again with Swift Loop, and I'm going to Swift Loop around here. You'll notice that all of a sudden it stops, and it stops because we don't have a quad here anymore. So what we might want to do then is go to our edges, grab our edges, and do our connect and connect around it. And we could just, in this case, just slide it back down to where we want. So I'm going to go and connect this as well. Maybe slide that down there. And I'm going to stick a knot hole in right in here, for instance. Now, to do that, we're going to need, a place, a hole essentially to create. So to do that, I'm going to go into 4, so faces. I'm going to grab the faces. I'm going to hit R for scale, and hold down Shift and scale it in so that it scales in where our knot hole is going to be. And then I'm going to go in and shape this out to look a little more like a knot hole, give it a little bit of a rounding to it, and pull it out into a shape that's going to be our hole. So to pop the hole in the surface, it's going to be really easy. All I got to do is grab those polygons again, move tool, hold down Shift, drag it right through, and it'll pop a hole all the way through. Now what you'll notice is it's missing some of the edges because it didn't know how to draw those on the other side. And for the sake of making sure that faces don't sort of fold back on each other, I'm going to select those, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I connect those together and add the connections. And I may have to fix other places like this where I move stuff on the top and didn't move it on the bottom, and it's making a mess, these double vertices in places. Well, that's okay. I'm just going to connect these up and make sure they're all connected. And then I'm going to use my target weld. So target weld being here, weld and target weld. Weld, if you pick two vertices, if they're within a weld threshold, and again, I shift click this to open up the caddy, it'll weld them if they're within the weld threshold. But sometimes it's easier actually to use the target weld, which you can just click and drag and tell it what it's going to weld to what. So that's going to weld to that. This is going to weld to that. And I think this one needs to as well. And that looks pretty clean now. So now I've got a knot hole. And again, I could go about, dressing this up, doing whatever I want to it. For instance, I'm going to hit 2 on the keyboard, double click ring, and now we're going to go ahead and just chamfer this off and just sort of put a bit of a chamfer into this to make it look a little nicer. And again, I'm going to use the shift and open the caddy to be able to add this, and you'll see right now I'm adding a lot of edge loops. I don't need all those in this case. I'm going to dial it down to just the one, and I'm going to take it down to a nice small little chamfer there just to kind of knock the edges off that and hit accept. So now I've accepted that as well. So any cleanup that needs to get done, make sure it looks like it's rendering correctly. You don't have black spots coming up. You might want to check it in your high quality mode if once we've got materials on it and whatever else. But there you go. I'm going to go with this, and we're going to flatten this out and create a textured board really, really quickly. Now that I have a completed model, so I've done a little more detailing, some more cracks and abrasions to it, sort of, corners, a little bit of polygon cleanup, just, welding some vertices, and some of the places where we chamfered, where it ended up with a quad, I force it to have the right edge go in between. That's something we'll learn as we go along. So let's go about unwrapping this now and laying it flat and how to do that. That's pretty easy. So I want to hit X and type unwrap, or again, you can go to the modifier list and look for it in here. And you'll notice it has a whole lot of green lines. Those are all seams that are all over the model from the fact that we started with a box. Now it's going to be a real mess because you can see there's lots of little tiny parts and pieces, and none of those will actually be unwrapped correctly. So it's going to be quite a mess. So what we want to do first is we want to clear them all. And so just so you can see it, there's this mess happening. If I go Control A right now, so I'm in polygon mode, which would be 3 on the keyboard, and we'll just unfold and pack this. You're going to see that there's like all these little tiny pieces down here, just tons of these little triangles, and we don't want that. We don't want all these little tiny things. We want as big a piece as possible that make as much sense as possible. So with this being said, to clear all of the current cut lines in it that have, where it's all been sort of sliced and diced, easiest way to do that is go right up here and apply a quick planar map to it, and it'll just map from this averaged angled gizmo, and it's on some crazy angle because it's taking the average direction every single one of those polygons points. Okay, and we're just going to do hit that, and you'll notice all the green ones go away, and you'll notice the unwrap is completely unusable. We need to be able to peel this flat, so it's laying flat on the ground. So I'm going to go to the top viewport. In this case, this one's going to be pretty easy. And I'm going to select the top viewport, sorry, um, and select everything from the top. Now, I'm going to get all kinds of things that I probably don't want, and but I am going to not get the back facing. You'll notice this ignore back facings on, and if we look, you can see we don't have the undersides. So this isn't bad. We've got all these side bits and stuff. We don't necessarily want that. Maybe we want the sides separated. We only want all the top sort of flat polygons on the top here. And so we can get there a little quicker if we apply this filter right here, which is select by planar angle. So what this will do is any angle between polygons that's inside of 15 degrees, okay, so, going from that angle to that angle, it will select across that angle if it's underneath that angle. So now with that, and I pick, you'll notice it grabs just about everything on the top for me. We probably want this piece in here. I'm going to grab those. I only had to click once because of the planar angles it was getting. This little notch here, I'll leave that maybe for the side. And we can see that I have one here that I don't want. Got to be a little careful. I go to, Alt deselect, and it's going to deselect everything because it's within that planar angle. So maybe I'll add these to this side, to the top, and then we'll see the other piece that's in there. And then so now I want to go in and take a look. You could also take a look straight from the top. It'll kind of identify which kind of mostly points up, and you could try selecting what you think you're going to want in there. And then before you do anything, make sure you go around and inspect to see what indeed you've actually have selected, and you haven't accidentally picked something else that you're not wanting. So all of that looks pretty good now. We've got all the top bits. We don't have any sort of missing polygons or holes. You want to be very particular and make sure that nothing's missing. And to break this off, we can do one of two things. We can just go and hit break, which is the break button right here. We can also just right click break, or you can hit quick planar map, because quick planar map will map this section and break it off for you. So if I hit quick planar map, you'll see that it kind of maps it and lays it out for us. I'm just going to move that off to the side, and we'll do the same thing for the bottom now. And then everything else can be on pieces for the sides. So if you want to select the bottom viewport, press V on the keyboard for viewports, and it'll bring up bottom. Or of course you could go in and say bottom from here, from this list as well, but there's no current hotkey for it. So I'm going to select all these again, and the same thing. This time I'll just do a break on here. So press the break, and it breaks that piece off. So you'll see there's a seam on there. Now we should be able to go along the sides and select those and select all the little elements along the sides. So it's just a matter of being a little bit careful that you get all your elements and pieces picked. So that's one way you could do it. I'm just going to grab those. They're included in it. It looks good. So I'm just going to hit break on there, and that breaks that piece off. Another way to do it is actually put the cut lines in. So if I want to grab this entire side piece, because it's all of these side bits are on one chunk right now. If I select that, you can see it's selecting all the way around. It's grabbing everything all the way around the model. So another way to break things off then is go into edge mode 2 on the keyboard, vertice edge polygon. I want to pick that edge and just say break that, and go down and break this down at this end and break. And then I'm going to take all of what's left along the end here, and it looks like I've already got some break lines going all the way down there. So that actually might work. That might work pretty good. We're going to find out. Let's take a look what the other corner looks like. It looks pretty good too. So let's find out what happens now when we try and flatten all this out. So I'm going to press the quick peel button right here, and we're going to hit quick peel, and it's going to peel it out. Now I just want to look at all these pieces. This one's going to be a problem because that's the inside of this. And really that's going to be an issue because, that is not going to flatten out. It's a circle like this. So we, again, need to find somewhere to break it. It's a cylinder. So let's break it there, and we'll just break that there, and we'll hit the quick peel again. You can see it straightened that piece out. Here's some ends. I'm going to turn on the select by element. So essentially what we refer to as islands, one of these islands. If I pick one of these now, with that on, it'll pick the entire island and show me that entire island. Okay, so there's those entire islands there. And I can just go around and inspect and see if there's any chunks that don't make sense, little tiny pieces in corners that it's packed away. And it looks pretty good. Now, the pack is doing a terrible job. I'm going to turn on rotate and press pack this time. So I'm going to turn on the rotate and just straight up pack because it's already been flattened with the quick peel, and pack it and see what happens. And then in some cases, you're going to find that it really needs a bit more straightening. Could even be sort of, multiple. So again, I've got these select by element, and let's pack everything. Oops, going to rotate them. I'm going to turn off the rotate. And so that's packed them all in there, relatively flat. We can now, add in, um, our texture maps in Photoshop, so we can render this out. So that's under Tools, Render UVW Template. I like to turn off seams so it doesn't show these green lines in it. And I'm going to press the render. Came up on my other monitor, but there it is there, and it's been packed into the UV space. So this is actually a terrible packing job for various reasons. There's several rules that we want to be able to follow. For project one with the crate, we're going to live with this if this is all you can get to. But right now, all of this space is being wasted, and there are pixels in the texture map that are going to have to load into memory. So it's highly inefficient as far as an unwrapping job. And it's something we're going to have to address as we move forward and start learning some of the more varied rules of unwrapping. But right now, let's make sure it looks good, and we'll worry about optimizations later.